Hello and welcome to the Pitlane podcast with me, HardyF1, and I'm joined today by special guest Dan Kobunite Robertson. Hello Dan, how are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Awesome.
How are you?
I am not too bad. Thank you for joining us today on the Pitlane podcast. So we're going to go through everything pre Grand Prix with testing briefly, and then we're going to cover the actual Grand Prix itself. Testing, did you manage to watch much of it?
It depends if my boss is listening.
Okay, so
if
unofficially, yes. Officially, no.
Yes, yeah, that's the correct answer. Yeah.
Okay, we'll take that then. Okay, so how did you find testing yourself? How did you think it went generally?
Well, I think the first thing I noticed was that Ferrari probably enjoyed testing a bit more than they did last year, which is good for everybody. I think to see a red car doing well.
Yeah, Ferrari did seem to have a good test.
Yeah, they did. And I think probably the next thing I noticed was that the Williams livery is substantially better on track than it is on screen. So that was also a nice surprise.
Yeah, the Williams livery was actually quite a nice surprise. I mean, I did like it before seeing it on track. I was surprised with the AR hacking incident, but I do actually like the yellow and the blue and the white. I think it looks quite nice, especially with their new sponsors as well. So I think that looks quite cool. I mean, obviously, the big shock of testing was Mercedes' lack of running, and everyone all of a sudden the internet going mad with Mercedes in trouble, Mercedes slow, Mercedes problems, which of course we'll get onto in the Grand Prix. But coming out of testing, Red Bull obviously looking like they were the favourites, with Max Verstappen looking like he was going to pick up an easy win and be fighting for the championship this season. But really, the whole grid looked really close as well, especially with all the teams. McLaren looked very fast, Ferrari, as you said, looked very fast, and Aston Martin looked very good, except for Vettel, who didn't get much running in the test itself.
Yeah, I think they look like they had very similar issues to Mercedes, which I guess isn't too much of a surprise given the controversy of last season. And I think they buy a few components from Mercedes. I think the gearbox is shared and stuff like that, so it's not too surprising they struggled a bit in testing as well.
Yeah, exactly. So with buying some of the components is helping the team, especially with the cost cap this year as well. That's finally coming into effect. So it'll be interesting to see how it plays out for the season. So pretty much to summarise testing then, so it looked like Mercedes were in trouble. Red Bull looked amazing out of the box at their pace. Perez wasn't quite up to speed yet with the car, and the midfield looked very close and very strong. So let's get on to the Grand Prix then. So of course, let's go through what happened in practice itself. So practice came, Verstappen had led pretty much all the times in FP1, FP2, FP3. The whole Mercedes, are they sandbagging or they not, seemed to still carry on until qualifying itself, I'd say. There was still doubts about if they were sandbagging or not. How do you think they were performing in free practice?
I think I messaged a few people after the first couple of free practice sessions, saying, asking when was the last time that we saw 4 different cars in the top 4, even in a practice session, right? And I think that was probably the first time I really believed that Mercedes might not have been sandbagging as much as everybody assumed.
Yeah, the interesting thing about that was seeing how in I think it was just literally 2 weeks they had from the end of the 4-day test, was it? 3-day test, sorry. The 3-day test, from the end of that to the first Grand Prix, and getting there on track, and everyone expecting to come out with this new aero update. that they apparently said they were having, and then Ted on Sky Sports F1 had said that they just ran the same car but were running it differently, and seeing some of the pace had come back, and you could see the difference in the lap times as well. You could see that Hamilton was getting a bit more confident with the car, but Valtteri does look like he was struggling in practice a bit more with the pace, and he was still complaining the car at some points was undrivable. So is a lot of it down to the car, or is it a lot of it the mentality of the driver, do you think?
I know it's hard to say. I do like Valtteri, but I think this is a little bit of a make or break year for him with Mercedes. I think he's probably put quite a lot of pressure on himself, so it's hard to say. But the car definitely didn't look as solid until sort of the end of qualifying, really, as it did for all of last year. So
Yeah.
the car's definitely not as good.
Yeah, you can definitely tell that with the new regulations as well, that even a lot of teams after the race itself, and we'll obviously get to that, we're talking about the difference between high rake cars and low rake cars, and the low rake cars were being punished a bit more by the regulations, but I do expect those teams to get on top of their issues sooner rather than later, and hopefully they'll get a bit more pace and performance back. But like you said, Mercedes did seem by the end of qualifying to finally have a car that looked like they understood it a lot better, and hopefully by the time they get to the next Grand Prix at Imola, they should understand it a lot better and should be a lot more competitive generally. So shall we go through the qualifying rundown then? So Q1 comes, and the first 5 eliminated was Mazepin in 20th, Mick Schumacher, there's a Michael there, Mick Schumacher in 19th, Sebastian Vettel in a surprising 18th, given how hyped up that Aston was meant to be, Latifi in 17th, and Esteban Ocon in 16th. So what do we think of the first qualifying session then?
It wasn't terribly surprising, I don't think. Yeah, I think George Russell was the standout performer in that session, though. To hustle that Williams out of the session into the next one that's just a mega performance on any day, I think.
Yeah, George Russell again, the superstar of Saturday, I'd say, getting that Williams out into Q2 and just showing the difference between him and Latifi. A lot of it is confidence, I guess, with Russell, and Russell knows that he, especially being backed by Mercedes, I guess he's had a lot more people in his ear, he's learned a lot more with the Mercedes team, and he just seems to be so much more confident in that car. He knows where he wants to develop that car and where he wants to put it, and to see him jump into Q2 was a fantastic achievement. But it has to be said though, Haas, surprising, I thought Haas would have been ahead of Williams in qualifying, giving all this talk with the new Ferrari update with the engine and some of their new parts coming in with new sponsors as well. So I was expecting a bit more, but both Haas's P20 and P19 back with the field. Not a good day for them, was it?
No, but I think it looks a lot like they're writing off 2021 already, and they're just 100% locked in, focused on next year, which makes sense when you've got a limited budget and 2 rookie drivers and a massive rules change at the end of the season. So it's a little bit surprising, but I don't think it's really out there in my expectation for this year.
Yeah, so I think you're right. I agree with you completely that Haas is just writing off the season, trying to learn whatever they can, ready for 2022, so when the drivers are ready, and see, especially with the funding now coming from the Mazepin's money, from his father, of course, seeing how much investment goes into that team. Of course, there's the whole topic, and we could debate it for hours about if Gene Haas will sell the team to Mazepin's dad, I guess, but that'll be for another time and place, I guess. I will say though, in qualifying 1, the surprise was Sebastian Vettel. We did all expect him to be easily much higher, maybe Q2 at least. Of course, he has had little running in that car, especially doing the least amount of laps in testing with it. But as he said, he's finding that the car is a very stiff chassis and very much different to what he had at Ferrari. But how long do you think it'll be until Vettel really gets on top of this car?
Well, I think someone who's won as many world championships as he had, you'd sort of expect him to start making pretty rapid progress from Imola. I'd be surprised if we saw him as far down as at Imola as we did this weekend. It was disappointing. I think he'd be the first one to say that. So I just really hope that this is new team, new car troubles rather than a sort of continuation of that final year at Ferrari.
Yeah, I mean, also again, we are talking Bahrain, quite a unique circuit as well, very rear limited, and I think Seb is one of the drivers that like to drive it on the nose a bit more. So I think he was struggling a lot more with traction in the rear of the car. So I think once he does get on top of it, he should be much higher, much closer to his teammate Lance Stroll. And then of course Nicholas Latifi and Esteban Ocon, about where we expect them to be in Q1.
I think I'm a little bit disappointed in Ocon, to be honest. Latifi to put it up in 17th is a good showing from him, but I think the real surprise was how slow, or relatively slow, Esteban was. Alonso putting it in P9 in the end, I think, and that's quite a big difference. So.
Yeah, but spot on exactly. Alonso getting P9 in that car, especially when he's been out of the sport for a couple of years, but it does show the difference between a multiple world champion who has all that experience in Formula 1 and someone who, I guess, is struggling a bit for confidence as well, considering he had to go against Daniel Ricciardo last year there for the last couple of years of making that team his and then jumping ship to Mercedes, sorry. So Ocon I expected to be doing a little bit better in Imola, but it could again be track specific, and just first Grand Prix, getting everyone back, especially after the hectic year of COVID last year, and the problems the team faced with that. So getting back into the swing of things, hopefully they should jump up. So let's jump into Q2 then. So qualifying 2, we had Russell on 15th, Kimi Räikkönen, the oldest man on the grid, 14th, starting next to the youngest man on the grid, Yuki Tsunoda, who I thought impressed in 13th, with Antonio Giovinazzi in 12th, and Sergio Perez a surprising 11th due to this whole tyre issue. So let's go back a bit. Let's talk first about Tsunoda then. So Yuki Tsunoda, brand new Formula 1, did really well in F2, the AlphaTauri driver, getting P13 in his first qualifying session. Did he surprise you in that?
I didn't know a lot about him until testing, and then I read up a little bit, and sort of learned how to pronounce his name, which is always useful. And I'm hearing Jenson Button and Anthony Davidson saying that he's one of the best drivers they've seen in Japan. And I think he proved that this weekend. I would not be surprised to see him on P2, P3 at some point this year in a AlphaTauri that looks rapid as well.
Yeah, that AlphaTauri car just seems so good. I mean, considering back when they were Toro Rosso, I don't think they were sharing as much data with the sister team at Red Bull. But I think since the rebrand and Honda coming in, they have had to share a lot more with engine information. And since losing James Key as well, the chief technical designer, going to McLaren, I think they have had to share a lot more. And that car does look so stable, so good in the high speed and the low speed corners around Bahrain. So yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if he gets maybe a P4. I don't know if he would get a podium unless something really happens to Hamilton, Verstappen, Bottas. I guess they are the typical top 3. But if they have an off weekend, who knows? I mean, Gasly last year proved it by getting the race win in Monza, so anything could happen. But yeah, so let's go into the next surprise of qualifying 2. Sergio Perez, Red Bull debut, not going to the start he would want.
No, I think that sort of underlines the whole weekend for him. I think with the race starting how it did, but yeah, I really like Checo. I think he's probably one of the better drivers on the grid, and I think there's going to be a lot more to see from him this year in that Red Bull. And I think it's understandable that he struggled a bit in the first quali session in a car that is a completely different philosophy to the Racing Point that he was driving just a few months ago.
Yeah, exactly. He's got to get used to the new Honda power unit and how that car's going to handle all the quirks of that car. I mean, I am surprised by the problems he had, especially. I mean, he didn't help himself by going and invalidating his lap at turn 4, and the whole thing about the track limits we will get onto, because that's going to be the big thing about the race, I'm pretty sure. So, but I mean, well, 11th isn't too bad to start, I guess. You are the first person on fresh tyres, so. And it wouldn't have been too bad if he had started from 11th, but of course we all know what happened in the start of the race. But I mean, he wasn't too far off from 10th. He was only 500ths off Stroll's time. So I think more time he gets in that car, he should be back up there and should be really on the pace where we expect him to be. And of course, to finish up qualifying too, George Russell, as we said earlier, did a great job to get into Q2, just driving the absolute nuts off that car, it seems. Kimi, again, P14, not too bad from the Iceman himself, but beaten by his teammate Giovinazzi in P12, and beaten by quite a bit as well, beaten by half a second, so Kimi just not happy with the car yet, do you think?
Yeah, I think I don't know whether he actually had a clean run either. I'm scrabbling a little bit for excuses there for him, maybe, but I don't think he would have been happy with that. Certainly, it's a little bit surprising. I think last year he consistently outperformed Giovinazzi, but I think this is probably just a bit of a blip on his season, all in all.
Yeah, exactly. So I think Raikkonen will bounce back, and overall in the season, if you ask me who's going to outscore or get the most points for Alfa Romeo, I do think Raikkonen does score more points than Giovinazzi this season. But I would like to see Giovinazzi finally come into his own, start getting a few more points and some good races, because that seat is, I guess it is going to become hot property, especially if Ferrari are paying for that seat with their deal with Alfa Romeo. So if he doesn't perform, there's plenty of other drivers that Ferrari could go to. Cal Milot, for example, is waiting, and we know how good he is from the if you watch F2. So he does need to perform and keep consistently beating Raikkonen and getting these points. So Giovinazzi does need to carry on this good start he had for qualifying. Okay, so qualifying 3 then. So from 10th downwards, we had Lance Stroll taking P10, Fernando Alonso coming back there before P9, so a great job from Fernando, and then Carlos Sainz on his Ferrari debut getting P8. And I mean, these times were so close between Alonso, Sainz, and Stroll, so very good job there from Sainz on a resurgent Ferrari. Lando Norris taking P7 and getting out-qualified by Daniel Ricciardo, which is funny because in practice, Norris had looked so much faster in testing and in practice, but then Ricciardo, when it matters, just by 5,000ths of a second again, it's like 500ths of a second again, beating his teammate Lando Norris. And then Pierre Gasly showing how good the AlphaTauri car is, taking a P5 in quali, and then Charles Leclerc back on form in P4. And of course our regular top 3, Valtteri Bottas, Lewis Hamilton, and then Verstappen 4/10ths of a second ahead of pole, and business looking like it was not quite as usual for Mercedes, but Red Bull carrying on their testing form. So how do you think qualifying 3 went?
I think I loved it. I think the last few years, Q3 has been Lewis on top by a reasonable distance, and then Bottas again by a reasonable distance. So I think to see the gaps that small and to see them in this order was exhilarating. Is just fantastic result for the sport, let alone Max and Red Bull.
Yeah, I agree completely with you. To see these regulations and this year of development with the car, I mean, a lot of these cars are B cars, I guess, from last year, which makes sense with a lot of the parts being shared from last year's cars. And it has really closed up the field, so there was battles everywhere. Hamilton, Verstappen, Bottas is one battle, but looking between Leclerc, Gasly, Ricciardo, and how close they were, Norris and Sainz, former teammates, of course, battling so close. And not knowing until the very last second who was going to finish where in qualifying was fantastic. And of course these cars are slower than last year's cars, but the battles everywhere on track was just fantastic to see in qualifying. So I mean, I'm looking forward to 22 more races at least of this kind of pace. Do you feel that Max is the favourite in qualifying going into Imola, or do you feel like over these next 3-week break that we have that Mercedes is going to close that up again?
I think that the boys and girls at Mercedes are going to be working overtime the next few weeks to bridge that gap. But I think it's going to be a bit of a task. I think you start the season, and you really have to build from there. So I think to be this far behind, and Red Bull aren't going to be sitting still. They're going to be working just as hard as Mercedes to capitalise on the little difference they've got. I don't know if you've seen it, but there's the chart of the qualifying times comparison between this year and last year, and Mercedes have lost over 2 seconds of lap time and Red Bull lost something like 1.3 seconds. So there's quite a big gap of ultimate lap time Mercedes have to recover compared to Red Bull.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, a lot of it is down to the regulation changes, of course, and they are trying to slow the cars down. Some of it will be track specific as well. Typically, Mercedes try and make a car that suits Barcelona and European tracks, and Bahrain's never been one of their strongest tracks. I think in the past they've won a lot of races at Bahrain because they didn't have competition to fight. You know, Hamilton and Rosberg was when 2014 and 2015 it was only them fighting each other for the race win because the car was so ahead of everyone else. But I think when we get back to the European circuit, I mean, going to Imola, that's going to be completely different once again. But I mean, I do expect Mercedes to come back in 3 weeks with some new upgrades to the car, and I think they will have learnt a lot as well. I mean, if you're going to have problems, you want to learn them now at the early stage of the season. Red Bull not having a lot of problems. I mean, we will get on to the problems they had during the race, but you want to have the problems to understand your car right now, what's wrong, to make it better throughout the season, than to get a few races in and then start having problems and being too late to be able to fix it. So, yeah, I do think Mercedes and the boys and girls there are going to be working overtime, but of course, Red Bull won't be any slouch. And of course, it's nice to see Ferrari back up there as well. So, that is the story of qualifying. So, let's get into the race section then. So, the race, of course, began with the extra formation lap because Perez's car did break down, just completely died. Now, I don't know what the exact fault was. I was unable to find what it was completely. All I do know was, thanks to everyone on social media, saying that he did just literally do a Control-Alt-Delete and rebooted the car and was fine to get away again. At that point, did you think Perez was out?
Yeah. I'd been texting some mate as well at the time. We were saying who's going to be the first one out of the race, and you know, my prediction ended up being correct with Mazepin, although it was so close to it being Checo, and I was heartbroken for him actually. Although, seeing as I had him as my turbo driver in the fantasy, I was quite pleased that he got started and had a lot of overtaking to do. So.
It is funny that you mentioned you were mentioning speaking to your friends about who you thought was going to be the first one out. I did say to a friend of mine, I think Mazepin will probably be the first one out because it'd probably be too aggressive and bin it. So I was right about that, but I was surprised with Perez having the problem on the way to the grid. But yeah, I was really made up that he managed to get back on track because I do like Sergio Perez. I think he's a fantastic driver. I like how he races, how he goes about racing. So I was glad he could get back into it. And of course he had a pit lane start. So yep, so lap one we had a full safety car because Mazepin, of course, Mazespin as Crofty called him on the live feed for Sky, straight into the barriers at turn 3. So, I mean, what did we really expect Mazepin to get that far? This is his first race.
I think he had a lot to prove, and I think that's probably part of it. I don't, I've watched F1. So my first F1 memory is Damon Hill winning the World Championship, and I don't remember anyone coming into the sport with the cloud over him that Mazepin has, and I think that probably played a little bit of a part. I think it might answer the question of why was he as aggressive as he was there, and it's a throttle thing. It wasn't, everyone that watched it knows he didn't take anyone out with him, but I think he's just over eager. I think it's a rookie error ultimately.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, and to make you feel even older, I was born the year that Damon Hill won his championship, so that's a little fun interesting fact. So, sorry about that. But yeah, again, as you can tell, he just got so... I mean, these cars are so lively when you get on throttle, so as soon as you get anywhere near the throttle, the rears will spin up because the rear-wheel drive, and I think it was just a complete rookie mistake, and he had a lot to prove, especially after qualifying when the team said it was a brake-by-wire issue. That's why he was spinning and crashing. So I think he had a lot to prove and just too eager coming out of turn 3.
Yeah,
just needs to learn to calm it down, have a cooler head, I think.
Yeah, it's the traditional Haas brake issues as well. I think I think the last 3 or 4 season openers have been characterized by Haas having brake issues, and it wasn't pleasant to see a Haas crash at that corner again after the incident last year. But
yeah, I did wince myself. I did think I was like, oh no, not again, please. And when they came up on the screen saying Mazepin, I'm okay, I was like, well, thank God, whether you like the man or not, the last thing I want is to see anyone get hurt. So I was glad that he was safe and okay. And you could tell it was a bit of a big one for him because it took a while for him to get out, so he was a bit shell shocked. So, but I'm glad he managed to get out, and apart from the car damage, no damage done to him. So thank God for that. So.
Yeah, I think Gunther would have had some choice words, which we'll hear about this time next year on Drive to Survive.
Yeah, so make sure to Drive to Survive, and we'll see that. So lap 4, we had a virtual safety car. Max then started talking about his card issues, and they were giving him different diff settings. So possible diff problems, if it was actually the diff itself, could have been something else completely unrelated. Could even be something like a drive shaft. Also at that point, we saw Gasly just making an. I guess it was quite a stupid error, you could say. It was uncharacteristic of him just to tap the back of Daniel Ricciardo and lose his front wing. But we did have the VST when I always keep calling him Michael. Mick Schumacher went off track and spun, and again he was just a bit too greedy on throttle, I think, and that could just be characteristics of the Haas car as well, and how the Ferrari power unit, the drivability, and I think given more time they will get used to that. And we'll dial it in a bit more, but yeah. So the first few laps were so chaotic in that race.
Yeah, I was sort of just waiting for them to actually do a racing lap. Yeah, I mean it was pretty standard, I suppose, in many ways for the first race of the season. But yeah, it was definitely chaotic, and I suspect the accountants weren't too happy either.
Yeah, I don't think the accountants would be that happy with that much damage, and especially with his cost cap and having to replace front wings and parts that he needed. I think a lot of them will be told, going to Imola, do you mind trying to save some of the car parts a bit? We do need to make them last a bit longer. So, but I mean, it was good when we finally got back up to racing. I mean, we had Lando Norris versus Leclerc, and they were battling lap after lap, and then finally the battle that every F1 fan had been after for years. Hamilton versus Verstappen. What a battle it was, giving the pit stop battle, giving the strategy. When 1 minute it looked like Verstappen had it, then it looked like Hamilton was having it, and the strategy was blown completely wide open, and then Hamilton going on through the hard tyres, but pitting so early it seems. So, what was your take on it at the time?
I thought that Red Bull might have blundered at the first set of stops when they ran Max that much longer.
Yes, it was.
Yeah, I think it was. I was very surprised that they didn't cover it off and take the safe route. And with hindsight, maybe they're saying we should have. We were that much faster. If we'd covered it off, we would have just gone off into the distance and everything would have been fine. But hindsight is 2020. But that battle, I really hope that is the season. I think we haven't had two drivers this close in pace since Rosberg left the sport, or at least two drivers at the front that close in pace with Hamilton. And it's just great to see it again, and it's even better to see it with two different cars.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think the sport completely needs. I mean, as a Hamilton fanboy, it's easy for me to sit here and say, yeah, I want Hamilton to win every race, but even I want Hamilton to win every race in a way that actually matters. There's no point saying, oh, I won because I'm the only fastest guy out there. To have someone out there really giving you a hard time, battling lap after lap. If you're not on the fastest car, you still manage to pull off a win. That will mean more than just saying, well, I'm the fastest car and I'm 2 minutes ahead of everyone else because I have the best car and I'm the best driver and whatnot. So having that competition really makes the sport so much better for it. And I know Hamilton and Verstappen will be really, really so happy to have this battle. And Verstappen finally has a chance to possibly win a title. Hamilton going for his 8th title really spiced up the action. And I think you're completely right that we haven't seen this since the days of Hamilton-Rosberg with the inter-team battle. And that gets on to another good point. Do we think Bottas is quick enough to be in that second seat of Mercedes?
Yeah, probably. I think maybe they do want him to be a bit faster, but I think you think back to all the dominant eras for all of the teams. There was the guy who was really, really fast, and then the guy that just reliably came home with the points. The Ferrari with Schumacher and Barrichello, and Red Bull with Webber and Vettel. You know, they come to mind as the teams were so dominant because they did have that reliable driver. I think, you know, Lewis is fantastic to watch and he's unbelievably quick, but now he's going to be going wheel to wheel with Verstappen. Having someone who's going to be in P3, P4 every single race like Bottas is going to be pretty important, I think, down the line for the championship, especially with Perez in that second Honda.
Okay, so if
right
we put you in the shoes of Toto Wolff and you had the decision for that second seat, would you stick with Bottas yourself, or would you give it to someone else like Judge?
Yeah, so it really depends on George, right? I think if he's being offered drives by, you know, teams like, you know, McLaren or Ferrari or whoever, you know, hypothetically speaking, I don't want to kick off any silly season rumours any too early.
You heard it here first, folks.
Yeah, if these teams start coming after George, I think that's where Valtteri's gonna be in trouble or at risk of losing his drive. But having George in that Williams that needs to grow and it needs to improve, it's invaluable experience for someone like him he's going to learn how to give feedback on a car that isn't as good as the Mercedes. You know, I think in the long term that's gonna help George. I think we'll see George in the Mercedes in the next couple of years. It's just whether he replaces Hamilton or Bottas is the question for me, because I think, you know, I don't think Lewis really knows how long he's gonna want to stay racing for, and I think that's probably what they're keeping an eye on Russell for, rather than replacing Bottas straight out.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think the big thing Mercedes want to avoid is another Hamilton-Rosberg atmosphere, of where you've got two guys who are as good as each other in 2016, for example, and they're battling for championships. And to go from, you know, being these best of friends to suddenly being so vicious on track and having silly incidents and almost costing themselves a championship, and having that almost disgusting atmosphere of they don't want to speak to each other, they don't want to be working for the team, they're using engine modes they're not meant to be using, and suddenly things become underhand and more dirty, is something they want to really avoid. And with Bottas they get that security. But I think I agree with you, if Russell becomes available, if the other teams start talking about signing him and snapping him up, they would have to force the hand a bit. I mean, it is interesting that, there was a good point raised on Sky Sports F1 a few weeks ago, I think during testing, when they were talking about how people talk about Charles Leclerc being this fantastic up-and-coming driver, and the same for Russell, and they did for Albon. But no one really talks about it with Norris, which is quite interesting, because is that because he's sealed in with McLaren? Or is that because of is he lacking something that the other teams don't really speak about? But I mean, if Norris does a really good season here, it is, you know, his third year and battling Ricciardo. I mean, if he beats Ricciardo on pace and gets a podium again, and gets, you know, even gets a win when the top three fail at something, you know, like a Monza, would Norris then be a good contender for, you know, a Mercedes seat, or a Red Bull if Perez doesn't improve, or even the Ferrari if Sainz doesn't work out?
Yeah, that's the interesting one. I think the thing with Ferrari and Red Bull, they've actually got a really exciting pipeline in and of their own, right? Like, you know, you've got Tsunoda, who I really hope Perez gets to stay at Red Bull for 2 or 3 seasons, and then Tsunoda can step up as the next Verstappen, because, you know, judging by admittedly one weekend of racing, he's going to be really exciting to watch on track. And, you know, Ferrari, they've got loads of drivers they could pick from, that are quick, that are very, very quick. So it's hard to see where Norris sort of fits into that picture. I think I've heard that sort of discussion point a few times over the last few days or since the test, and I'd love to know. But I think he is core to McLaren, and I think they've doubled down on that a little bit, because I think they were very hopeful that Sainz was going to stay with the team and be a long-term pairing with Norris, and, you know, he took the chance to go for Ferrari, and I think basically any driver on the grid other than maybe Lewis and Max would take that take that opportunity if it was offered to them. So it's not surprising, but Lando's very excited. I think his results are proving that he's fast enough as a driver. I don't think there's much to say that he's lacking yet. It's hard to say what will happen when the pressure's really on him, and he's, if he's ever in a car that can qualify P1 and he's got to take it from beginning to end in the lead. I don't know, but I think we're at least a season away from finding out that question, aren't we?
Yes, especially being in a McLaren that now has a Mercedes engine as well, finally getting rid of the Renault engine. So now he's got a Mercedes engine, a works McLaren team, effectively, a team that has won many races, has had great drivers, Prost, Senna, Lauda, So he's got a long history of that with the sport. So if you're chosen by that team and they believe in you, that's going to give you some confidence at least. And now you've got to go, you've gone against the likes of Sainz, now you've got to go against the likes of Ricciardo. If he can make that team his own and really push forward these results, who knows what could happen. I mean, if Mercedes did pull out of the sport and just became an engine supplier, their focus then would be on McLaren and Aston. So it wouldn't be in a bad position. I mean, I don't see Mercedes pulling out the sport personally, but if they did, that wouldn't be too bad for them. But I mean, if Lando starts getting really good results, and so, and George impresses, that would give Mercedes a bit more of a headache if Lando's doing really well and he's available all of a sudden, so especially with how good he could be. But let's carry on with the race anyway. So, lap 31, Bottas finally comes in for the pit stop and gets another slow stop on his front right, and just, I mean, do you ever feel sometimes like Valtteri's a little bit cursed at times? Like, no matter how well he does, something just goes against him. I feel like Valtteri just needs a clean weekend.
It does feel like that. It really does. The luck he has had over at the end of last season as well. Like it's just been atrocious. When it rains, it pours for him. I think at the moment.
Yeah, it just seems like he can't catch a break. I mean, obviously we're gonna get onto the memes later, because especially a couple of years ago, Twin Barrel J, who I hope to have on this podcast at some point. When him and HardyF1 were doing the podcast for Formula Fun, they used to do a lot of memes, and I do a Bottas meme about it. But it just seems, I almost want to give Bottas, just go up to him, give him a big hug. I just feel so sorry for him at times. I mean, you're there, you're in the zone, you're doing really well, you start to the pressure on Verstappen, say box, you come in, and again in Bahrain, he just can't get a good pit stop. He hits his marks. I didn't see anything wrong with his pit stop itself, but then just that sticky front right again just seems to be an inherent problem. I mean, hopefully he'll catch a break and get a bit of good luck, but I mean, I don't really think he's actually cursed, but who knows. So, but then lap 34. No, sorry, go on.
I was going to say, I think he's probably got the worst or the second worst teammate to have in Formula 1, probably in professional racing around the world in any series in Lewis Hamilton, because the guy is, whether you like him personally or not, he's relentless. He's absolutely relentless. I think the only person you'd rather have less than Lewis as your teammate is probably Max Verstappen, right? Who, again, is just unbelievably quick all of the time. So it's going to be difficult for Bottas to build that head of steam. And, if he does, he absolutely deserves it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think considering that he has to go against Lewis, and I mean, let's be frank and honest, whether you like the guy or not. 7-time world champion, most race wins, breaking virtually every record set by the great Michael Schumacher. To go against the best in the sport by stats, to go against someone who's just relentless, as you said, someone who's so fast and is always pushing. I mean, Bono came with the radio and said, not bad for an old man. He's only 36, so. To go against someone like that, who and most people that age would be, okay, I'm going to retire now, I've been past my prime, that's fine. And someone who's just never giving up, whilst also trying to be an activist and a musician and a humanitarian and all these other things. It must be hard for Bottas, who, Monday morning he's looking at the data, Tuesday he's training, Wednesday he's training, Thursday he's doing a media day, and everything's about his racing. And he sees Lewis in a normal weekend, Monday he's writing a song, Tuesday he's doing a fashion show, Wednesday he's playing the piano or something. Doesn't really do much on a Thursday, doesn't really do a lot of interviews, but then comes to Friday, Saturday, Sunday and he beats you by 30 seconds. It's like, what does he have to do to beat him? one side of it is this mental game that I guess Lewis subconsciously plays. He's not actively playing it, I don't think, but he's just so good, and I think Bottas is doing the best he can. And it does also mean, if they put another driver, if they put George in, just because George was fast in the Sakhir Grand Prix, doesn't necessarily mean he's going to be as faster than Bottas right now compared to Hamilton, because he might be quick, and I do think George is quick, but when you then suddenly have Lewis Hamilton as your teammate and not Bottas, and Hamilton starts beating you consistently, what kind of damage does that do to you mentally? I mean, Senna would do it, and they always talk about, Martin Brundle would talk about it, saying that Senna knew that if you jumped out of his way once in qualifying, he had you mentally finished for the whole season. So it is a huge mental game in Formula One.
Yeah, I think it's huge, and there's another reason why I sort of hope that Russell does stay at the Williams until Lewis leaves the sport, because it's one hell of a position to be in, to be compared to Lewis Hamilton. And for me, that highlights just how good that championship year was for Rosberg, because to beat Lewis in the same car, it takes 100% dedication, and you have to be fast enough to do so. You need luck, but I think Lewis needed a bit of luck as well to beat Rosberg as consistently as he did. So the luck does come both ways, and being compared to Lewis is it must be so difficult for Bottas.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, as you said, with luck as well. 2014 Hamilton, Hungary breaking down, qualifying, come back with a race win. 2016 his engine blows Malaysia and Rosberg wins that season. It's not all luck, of course. It is down to skill. And Rosberg saying in an interview that he was so burnt out that he just retired at the end of it. And I would have liked to have seen him try and defend the title, because then you could, it's one thing to beat Lewis Hamilton in a season where people are going to say, oh, you only won it because of an engine blow or this. But if he came back and defended it successfully in a fair season, especially in 2017 with the new regs at that time, that would have really stamped his ground even further. So it would have been interesting to see. But anyway, that's by the by. So lap 34, Alonso DNFs, unfortunately, rear brake failure. Do you know what caused the rear brake failure?
No.
A sandwich bag. It was revealed today. One of the fans' sandwich bags got on the track, caught in the rear cut of the brake duct, and overheated the brakes.
So these fans are a nuisance, right?
First time they're allowed back in, and there's a massive problem. This multi-million-pound car, highly technical, all this fantastic design, gets stopped by a sandwich bag. So
yeah, it's
absolute shame for Alonso. But I'm sure he'll bounce back in Imola with a new policy: no sandwich bags into the tracker. So.
Yeah, and it's the best-looking car on the grid, so I certainly hope so.
Is it the best-looking car on the grid?
Oh, that blue is just spot on. It's curvy. It's curvy. It's blue. It's just a great looking car. I think the Aston's boring. The Mercedes is subpar. the Red Bull is the same. The McLaren is brilliant, but the Alpine for me stands out.
So that's Dan's view. Okay. I mean, I'm a Mercedes fanboy. I'm going to say I like the Mercedes. I do genuinely like it, even without being biased. I think the best looking car on the grid, and I will go to it, is the where is it? Do you know what? I'm going to just say I think it's the Williams. Actually, I like the gold. I think it's so nice and so different, because Red Bull the same. Mercedes come out with the typical black and blue, and I don't like the blue on the halo. Okay, I don't like that. The AlphaTauri is the same design as last year in colour scheme. The Aston Martin, the original Aston Martin design they had with the lime green would have been fantastic, because the last minute BWT deal just had to change it to pink. I don't really like the Alfa Romeo just inverting the red and the white. I'm not a huge fan of. But I don't know, I just really like the Williams, especially on the track, and I love the Muddy Walker tribute as well, and the only team to do that as well. So
yeah,
I was really surprised
the Williams does remind me just a little bit of that championship-winning Rothmans livery.
Yeah,
right? It's the same tones, it's the same sort of like a feel to it, I think, with that gold and the dark blue. But I do like that Williams livery, especially on track. But the Alpine is glorious. But I'm a bit of an Enstone fan. when I look back through the teams that I end up rooting for throughout seasons, it's whoever is inhabiting Endstone seems to crop up quite regularly.
Yeah, I mean, I will give you the Alpine, or the Alpine, I should say Alpine, is a nice car. I will give you that. It's much better than last year's Renault, and I did like last year's Renault. I mean, I have a F1 calendar right in front of me of all the cars, and currently is the Renault, so which is handy. And I did like the yellow and black. I mean, I did like the black and gold they had of 2013 when it was Lotus. I mean, have been some fantastic liveries and have been some shocking liveries, but I mean, what I will say, and I'm sure you'll agree with me on this, is there isn't a minging car. There isn't a disgusting livery, apart from maybe Haas. I mean, but that's because for the wrong reason. I think if it was just if it wasn't the American team, it was just a unique design, it wouldn't be as bad. But I think that if you take away the politics of it, you take away the Mazepin thing and the whole money, and if they're allowed it, I think it's just a flat design. I don't really like the white on it. I think it's just too flat.
Yeah, it's not got that classic undertone that like the Brawn had, for example. That's a classic livery, and it was white, right? But it's beautiful. It was understated, and it's a classic, timeless livery, especially in the Australia version. A bit less so as they started to add the sponsors to it. But the Haas is entirely forgettable, I suppose. So is the Aston for me. Even if it was lime green, I think it'd be forgettable. You look at their GT cars and the liveries the Aston works efforts have put out have just been top notch for the last, since they finished their association with golf anyway.
I think the Aston would have looked amazing if they'd done it in like a glossy silver, a bit like a Bond car. Especially if they want to tie in with the Bond, maybe that would have been nice. I mean, everyone was saying about the white wheels of, is it the AlphaTauri, I think? Me, Crofty pretty much was super excited by it. He was like, oh, white wheels on an F1 car, it's great. And I wasn't really fussed, to be fair, because I mean, during a race, I'm not really paying attention to the wheels. I pay attention to the tyres, but not really the wheels. I'm not going, ooh, look at that wheel nut,
Yeah, although I did notice that in the F2s now they've got the bigger rims, right? It did that caught my eye.
Yeah, because this is the last year of the 13-inch rims, like up to 18-inch in 2022. So that'll be interesting to see as well, especially with the profile of the tyres. We'll see how that handles. So that'll be very interesting. So we'll carry on to nearly the end of the race report, and we've got loads of other stuff to go through. So lap 45, Vettel crashing into the back of Ocon. What did you make of that?
If I'm perfectly honest, I missed it. I got distracted making some food. So.
Do you have the podcast up?
I do, yeah.
Okay, I will get a clip of it then for you. I'm sure I can find it. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a very as much as it pains me to say it sounds like a very Vettel incident, given his form last year.
Okay, so here is the onboard. I have muted it for now, but this is how it happened. So Ocon, I believe, with DRS makes the move into turn 1. Vettel comes back and just locks up the brakes and hits him, and then spins. And Vettel complains, saying that Ocon had switch lines, which it's hard to look at and say he did switch lines, in my opinion. But I mean, I will replay it for you, and then you can make your judgment.
I think that there is some previous form with Ocon being a very aggressive driver, right? But to me, looking at this now, it just looks like every other incident that Vettel had last year. To be honest with you, he just dropped it, right? I think that's pretty much all you can say.
I think what caught him out is, especially with this Formula car, is the second you get behind another car, you lose all braking performance, you lose all downforce because of the dirty air. So I think he was braking at the same point he was used to. And should have just
but he's a full-time world champion, not a sim racer.
Exactly. But I mean, it depends if you think he's a great 4-time world champion or if you don't think he's that good of a 4-time world champion. You can tell which one I'm in. Because I have my own views on Sebastian Vettel that I'll leave out of this podcast for another time.
Yeah, maybe we'll do a whole special episode in the off season on
Yeah,
on
on Hardy's views of Vettel and how good or bad I think he is as a driver. But yeah, I mean, he was very quick to say Ocon changed line, but I mean, Ocon went behind him, then stayed left, and Vettel just locked it up in Spinella for that meme if you want that. So yeah, I think that was a disaster for Vettel. Vettel, interestingly, now has 5 penalty points in one weekend. So,
yeah.
not looking good for a 4-time world champion. But then, of course, from lap 40, well, really from lap 38, I think it was, till the end, the battle we've been waiting for, which is Lewis Hamilton versus Max Verstappen. And we will talk about it. That move. Do you think that move was fair and legal from Verstappen?
Do you know what? I almost think there's two different questions there. Do I think it was fair? I think we've seen a lot of moves that have been unfair, and I don't think that one was really that far across the line. It wasn't legal. It definitely wasn't legal, which is why he had to give it back. But I think we've seen Lewis make overtakes in a similar situation. We've seen Alonso do it. They've all done it, and a lot of the time they've gotten away with it. So I don't necessarily think it's unfair. I think Max was right to be told to give it back. I think he was probably also right to have wanted to just go off into the distance and deal with it after the race.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I agree with you completely. I think if he just carried on, I mean, he's expecting a 5-second penalty, but I mean, for that kind of move, let's be honest, the track limits rule was so confusing for them, because in practice and in Thursday's director notes, they were told we are not looking at turn 4, it's fine. And then after FP1, we're looking at it for practice and quali, but not the race. And it gets to the race, and then there's been this video that's gone around, I'm sure you'll find on social media, of counting how many times Lewis Hamilton went off in the race with no one around him. It was 29 times. And they're saying he got to 29 times and then he got warned. He actually got to about 26, I think it was, and then he got the warning and did it 3 more times later on, which was narrow because he was on curb, which still counts as track, but not the track limit. But then they're saying, oh, well, Max got penalised straight away for doing it once. But the difference is, going off track and gaining an advantage is one thing, but going off track to pass someone and staying in front is another. So it's 2 different arguments. But I don't think that the FIA helped themselves, because, I mean, it is easy for us to say, it should just be a black and white rule, That's off track, that's on track, stay on track. I mean, that's what it should be. And there are times where you can say, well, okay, well, here, for example, you take turn 1 at this track and you do have to go a bit wide off because of the camber or because of the way it's designed, and they go, fine, fair enough. So it's not as simple as some people think it is, and there is a lot of armchair supporters and a lot of armchair pundits, I guess, who think they know everything about track limits and track rule. But in this case, for example, I think it was he was right to go for the move. You're under pressure. You've got less laps, towards the end of the Grand Prix. You don't know how long you're going to have left until, especially if you've got car problems and you just want to get out in front and try and get to the end and win, and then deal with it later. But on the other side as well, it should be a fair move and should be made cleanly. Obviously we had the Verstappen incident in Kota a few years ago as well. Well, when Raikkonen was still a Ferrari driver. So, hopefully by the time they get to Imola, they'll just clear it up, because it either is on track or it isn't off track, and it is something the FIA need to deal with. So that's what I'd take from that.
Yeah, just for me, they need, as a viewer, it just needs to be simple, right? All 4 tyres between the white lines. Policing it is a different issue, right? That's something that they're going to have to deal with, whatever rule they choose. But Brundle's been saying it for years. Ted, all of them. At the moment, the drivers are just almost allowed to do whatever they want with track limits, and at certain tracks on certain corners they get a slap on the wrist for taking it a little bit too far. But so often it's just ignored, and it's it's a sideshow, and it's one that we don't need. The sport's exciting enough without having to talk about track limits.
Yeah, exactly. And it is one of those things as well. I mean, the rule I've always liked personally is as long as you've got one wheel over the line, it's fine. It's a bit like tennis. If the ball's touching the line, it's fine. But again, the thing Martin Brundle and Ted have all said, and it is true, is if you allow that at turn 4, then why not just go off the escape road turn 1, cut inside, and go straight to turn 3, and you just cut out turn 1 to make your own track. So they have to have track limits, so you're not corner cutting. And and I know from like playing F1 2020, there's times where it's a bit BS, where you just ride a curb and it gives you a penalty, and that's where it's too extreme, of course. But there is that point where there's taking track limits and edging it, I guess, and pushing the limit a little bit until you get told, okay, that's enough. And then there's going clearly off track. And they always say, it's all about lasting advantage, but no driver would go out off track if it wasn't gaining an advantage. You wouldn't say, well, I'm going off track because it's slower. You go off track because it's faster if it means, if you're going to do a quali lap and you stay on track at turn 4 and it's a 1:31, but you go off and it's a 1:30.1, you've gained a second, you've gained the advantage. So all drivers know that if that's the better line, if that's straighter, if it means you stay on the power, that's what they're going to do. So it needs to just be a clear rule of, if you've got one, either all 4 tyres have to be in, or one has to be in at least. You put sensors out there. It could be, you can do it it does work well at other tracks where it's 3 times, then you get a black and white flag. Then after that, it's a 5-second penalty, and so on. But to be, this is the first time in a while where it's been so extreme, where 1 minute it's okay to go off track, the next it's not, then it is, then it's not, then it's a penalty, give it back, or I think it was just so muddled that it could have been handled a lot better.
Yeah. Top and bottom of it. It's a disappointing end to a brilliant battle. I think for me that whole incident is, because after that Verstappen had no pace, or he didn't have no pace. He was still ridiculously fast, but he wasn't able to get close enough again. I think, whether he picked up some marbles or it overheated the tyres or dust or whatever he got from out there that slowed him down a little bit. It sort of tarnished the end of a really good battle, and that's not to say Lewis didn't deserve to win it, right? At all, not at all. But I think if Max had cooled off a little bit and not done that and just waited another turn or 2, he would have got him, or it would have been a real scrap right to the end, right? Whereas it sort of didn't fizzle out, but it wasn't far off.
Yeah, exactly. I think it did rob us of that good battle, and I did see the posts on social media of the irony of, if Perez didn't break down and we had the extra formation lap, there would have been 1 extra lap, and Verstappen might have got him then as well. So
yeah, and I think Perez would have been on P3 as well in that sense, looking at his pace this race.
Yeah, which would have been a fantastic job. So, but of course, by the end of the race, Lewis gets the win and Verstappen takes P2. So, I mean, I'm not as good as Matthew Gallagher is at WTF1, but I will go through the finishing positions as fast as possible. So, here we go. Hamilton, Verstappen, Bottas, Norris, Perez, Leclerc, Ricciardo, Sainz, Tsunoda, Stroll, Raikkonen, Giovinazzi, Ocon, Russell, Vettel, Schumacher, Gasly, Latifi, Alonso, Mazepin. See, I can do it in one take. He takes 10. See, I'm not that bad.
I feel like we need to get a stopwatch for next time and see if
we can beat it. Yeah,
get a record right.
Of course, for DNFs was Mazepin with the crash, Alonso the brakes. Latifi did DNF with like a lap or 2 to go because he had what they call a boosting pressure issue, which I'm pretty sure last time I checked is a turbo issue. But they don't want to admit that. So it was only P1 to P17, but Alonso and Latifi did get counted, I believe, but Mazepin does not get counted because he didn't do enough laps in the race. The big points I take away from this race, Tsunoda getting points on debut, fantastic. I just thought that was really good. And the fastest lap was a 1:32.090 by Bottas because he did pit on like second to last lap when he realised he had P3 guaranteed. And it should also be said as well, Hamilton getting the new F1 record of race laps led. It was previously 5,111 the Schumacher had, and I think it's now 5,126. So fantastic job there from Hamilton. Anything else to add about the race?
Perez's performance there. it's just great to see him in this car and have this opportunity again, because he had it with McLaren quite a while ago. But it's also in a way it's a little bit heartbreaking, because I did like Albon, I did, but this, just on this one race alone, it shows why they needed to bring Perez in. I think he's I don't without a massive turnaround from Alex in the off season, you wouldn't have seen this result in that situation if everything happened to him as happened to Perez. So it's great to it's so good to see this much competition throughout the grid. Really, there's not, even the back markers are that little bit closer together, which it's just so good to see. It's so good to see.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you completely. Perez's performance and that never give up attitude was fantastic, and the whole pace of the field. I think in qualifying 1 to 14, in qualifying at the end of P3 was under a second in difference. So to see him all close up is fantastic. So, I mean, that pretty much just swept the race, though. I mean, and of course, the other thing I should say, Lewis winning was the 300th Grand Prix win for a British driver. So, another record there as well.
So he's got to have about half of those, hasn't he?
Yeah, I think he's got 96. So
Yeah.
he's got almost a third of them on his own, and that includes the likes of Jackie Stewart, because they count him as British, even though he's Scottish. Clark, Hill, Mansell, so Button. So to have almost a third of them by yourself is truly fantastic. So before we get on to some of the other business we have to get on to, let's get on to the memes of the Grand Prix, because I am bringing it back, so I do have a little sideshow prepared. So here's the first one we have. I think I have 7. So, of course, classic fun, classic style. Are you spinning, son? So Rage would give it out of Kimi Boaz. He'd do it like out of Boaz. We're going to do it out of Bono's, because obviously my tyres are gone, Bono. Out of 10, how much do you rate that one?
Right now, first race of the year, I think we'll give it 4 Bonos, but
okay,
I suspect this one's going to grow.
Okay.
I think this one's going to, give it another couple of races, and you might be hitting a 7, 8.
Okay, sweet. So we'll give 4 Bonos for the first meme, so that's nice. Okay, meme number 2. If it wants to load, it was working before. Oh, hang on, that's why. Who would win? One of the most sophisticated pieces of machinery ever made, or Abdul, who didn't throw the wrapper in the bin after eating his sandwich?
Yeah, that's a 6.
So
I'll give that one a 6.
I'll give that a 6. I think it's about a 6. And then the next one, if I click it right, should be this one. One Japanese rookie versus a 4-time world champion, a 2-time world champion, and a 1-time world champion.
Oh, that's a 7. That is
7.
a hedge dog.
That's a Sonoda 7. I'll give that a 7 as well. I agree with you completely there. So let's go to the next one, which is Vettel being too late on the brakes. Why did Ocon change his line?
10 Bonos out of 10.
That's 10 Bonos. My tyres are definitely gone off now.
That is a Silverstone Bonos out of 10.
Oh, that is brilliant. He's getting the champagne on the podium for that. Okay, let's get to the next one, which is all about Ferrari's names. Could your car names be consistent for a year? Obviously, they keep changing it out of pattern.
I don't even know what their name is this year, to be honest with you. I'm coming up.
Is it the SF? In fact, I can tell you. It is the... In fact, where's it gone? I did have it.
I think it is the SF21.
I think it's actually changed. I think it's the...
Oh, they changed it already.
Is it the SF1000? No, that was last year, wasn't it? It's the one after that. It's now it's SF21. Yes, it's the SF21 this year. Last year was the SF1000, and before that was the SF90, and then the SF71H.
Yeah,
So,
didn't they have the Fiat as well at one point?
I think they did, yeah. So how many Bonos for that one?
I do 5. It's a mid-range Bonoing, that one for me.
And then these ones just seem to be general. So, hi, my name is Jason. Nice to meet you, Jason. But you can't fit in your brain because it's full of Formula 1 knowledge. Say, Jarvis, want to hear why Hamilton will win his 8th title?
I mean, is that you?
Yes, that is. I will give you that. That is me.
That's
Sorry,
Bono.
sorry, Ian. I forgot your name. What did you give that then?
We'll stick at 5, I think, with that
5.
one. Maybe a 6. Maybe a 6.
I think I've got one more. Yeah, here we go. Describe Formula 1 in one image. Choose Val's just photos. Copy. Give that a 9. Okay, I think I'll give that a 9 as well. And do I have any others? No, it's back
I think that's
to
probably one of the
first
most heartbreaking images for anyone in Formula 1, right?
I think it has to be. It's sad but true, to a degree.
You know, I think the guys that raced against Michael Schumacher are gonna feel every
Yeah,
ounce of
I think
pain as well.
Barrichello could feel that. You know, you're slower than Michael. Copy.
Yeah,
So-
and the Fernando is faster than you as well. I think it's
Yeah. So they are the memes this episode, of course. Next time out, which is going to be on the 19th of April, because every following Monday after the Grand Prix we'll be doing this. We will have more memes, of course. So to wrap up then, there's a few things I have to say, of course. Announcement is that the Foxworth shop is now live. I will get the link up because I did have it and I completely misplaced it. Where was it again? There you go. So it's shop.spreadshirt.com/Foxworth-Autosport, and I will put it on the screen in a second.
rolls off the tongue.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Let me get the window cap. Definitely not paid to say this. Display cap. I mean, okay, that's weird. Why is it only picking up one display in my display cap? Weird. I'll do it as a window cap instead. There we go. Okay, so yeah, Foxworth. Finally, Foxworth Autosport has the shop launched live today, and you get 15% off the shop for only 13 days left, guys. So get your merch. I mean, look at this. We have our GT4 Championship top as well. Image that you put on the top. You can have it on a mug. You can have it on a pillow as well, or a bottle. You can have your dog celebrating us as well. So make sure you get this, and all you have to do is go to the top and press redeem, and you'll get 15% off. Of course, we have all the Foxworth designs. We also have our individual designs. So we have Dan the Barbecue Man and of course the apron of, you know, just pure awesomeness. So you want to get that apron. You also have Kobunite's own designs as well. This is not for profit as well. So the Foxworth himself isn't taking profit for this. He's putting it back in the team, which is very kind and awesome of him. I mean, of course, you know, you get a Kobunite tie-dye, which, I mean, look how sexy this top is. I mean, I definitely want one of them. That will impress the ladies. And of course, we also have the HardyF1 merch there as well. So more is going to be added over time. You can get a sticker. So that is out now. So if you go to shop.spreadshirt.com/Foxworth-Autosport, you can get 15% off for the next 13 days. So make sure you tune in there. The other thing we have as well is the Just Giving page. So if I go to it, RRL and Foxworth doing the iRacing page, so the iRacing event, they did sponsor it with Fibromyalgia Action UK very kindly, and we have raised £239, and Foxworth Autosport is matching donations up to £300, so we could get £500, and the page is open for another week. So if you go to justgiving.com/fundraising/Foxworth Auto, you can see a little bit of the story and the donations, and you can donate there. So if you can support it, please do, because all the money that is raised there goes to the charity that I did a 24-hour live stream for last year as well, and Foxworth is donating that too. So please go and support that if you can. So the only other things I have to say, while I remember, is thank you to our monthly Patreons at Foxworth Autosport, which is Myrio. You'll see in the top right, I butcher names awfully because I can't pronounce them. I do apologise. Mario, is that how you pronounce it? Cheers, folks. So yeah, of course, if you become a Patreon, you'll be mentioned in these videos, like the plumber suite. You'll be mentioned in the top, and of course, yeah. So join us on the 19th of April for the next one. Any last thoughts, Dan?
Can't wait for Imola. I mean, it baffles me that we're going to Imola next. It feels so strange.
Yeah, it's just an article from Bahrain to Imola.
but I'm so happy. It's such a great circuit. Barring its unfortunate history and that horrible weekend, but it's just, I think the one thing I hope is that Russell finally gets that result after the heartbreak last year at Imola.
Yeah, I think he needs that redeeming race as well. So, of course, as our special guest for this episode, where can our viewers catch you and what's coming up for Kobunite yourself?
Yeah, so I'm at Twitch TV /Kobunite, or Kobunite, however you want to pronounce it. We've just finished up the LRR GT3s in the Audi, which I will gloss over.
Yeah, we know how much you love the Audi.
I love it. It's great. We're about to start. I'm about to start 3 seasons, 3 different series with LRR. The mixed grid, in the. Well, I think we're going in the Porsche for the mixed grid on the British GTs, and then we've got the next season of GT3s as well, which we're going to be in the Bentley for, and then I'm starting the Ultra Endurance season as well next Thursday, which is probably the next time I'll be streaming is next Thursday for the Ultra Endurance at Bathurst.
Awesome, sweet. So make sure you tune in to twitch.tv/Kobunite, however you pronounce it. I get it wrong, I'm sure. But make sure you join Dan, because Dan is an awesome driver and a great person to watch. You can join me, HardyF1, on twitch.tv/HardyF1. At some point, I'll be doing the 12 hours of Nürburgring for AOR, and I'll be racing with Brexit Boy /Foxworth Autosport, however that's working out again. And I'm sure there are some more events. There is RRL on Thursdays here on twitch.tv and youtube.com/Foxworth_Autosport. So make sure you join there, and make sure you check out LTC_Foxworth and check that out on YouTube. So Dan, the only thing left to say is thank you for joining me today, and I hope to see you in the next episode or the next few. So thank you very much for joining me.
It's been great.
Well, thank you very much, and I will catch you next time on the Pitlane podcast. Till then, stay safe and peace.